the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's begin it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
That is a lot of this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 335, I believe. I don't think I changed the number. I thought I did. I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson. And tonight we're continuing with Storytime with the Biden family. And we're getting into some... the timeline here. We're getting into some history, and it's going to be a bit interesting, and it's also going to be very dry at the same time. So I have some things that I want you to think about while we're going over this, but before I get into that, we gotta do what we gotta do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. Hopefully, in the near future, we'll see some dampeners falling on that wildfire. It just looks like some things are changing in the way that society works, but we can't trust that it's going to change fast enough to defend us against the woke mafia. So we're still taking our precautions. So in light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to help by tipping us directly, instead of relying on any social media platforms tip jar, so we get the whole tip instead of minus what the platform takes, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, even now, even on X. Which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. So, there's a couple things that I will bring up before we get into this timeline. And, reading through this stuff, so first of all, I did find a way to download this report, and it did not help, so we're just going to have to deal with the online version. What ended up happening was it gave me just the part about sex crimes, and I can't do that live, because if you actually go to the link that I've provided in the low bar to this report, and you go to that section and you start looking at the pictures, you'll see immediately that we'd get yeeted off of YouTube before the show was over if we started just randomly going through that. And also there's some things in there I really don't want to see again. So that's it's the approach that I want to take if we discuss specifically Hunter Biden's sex crimes. Isn't really to go through and be like, oh, look what he did here and look what he did there. And my concern with regard to that is Joe Biden wrote the Violence Against Women Act to take away your due process rights if you are accused of a sex crime and you happen to be male and the person accusing you is female. Right?
Meanwhile,
meanwhile, Will Smith pointing out the obvious meme, like, look at the shitload of things that he just pardoned his son. Like, look at all the fucks that Joe Biden's son should not have taken against people's will or all that stuff.
I really wish I wish there was a way to overturn that decision, and I'm sure that just undoes a whole bunch of precedents, that. But it's just
yeah. Okay, it's the double standard really gets me. Like that. That's a big thing right there.
So obviously, right? But so all right. So we let him. He's been pardoned with that. How about the people who let him get away with that shit, right? How about we go after some officials who, the ones who actually sold him the firearms when he was actually, on drugs, admittedly,
Yeah, you got to be careful with that too, because sometimes the individual who sells the gun really genuinely doesn't know. So when you go in to buy firearms, you get forms to fill out, and there are things that you are required to disclose, like are you a drug user, which a lot of people have actually been prosecuted for non-disclosure of drug use on those forms. It's not just Hunter Biden. We went over that last week, but there's other things like you can't, if you are in treatment for a mental health condition, like you got obsessive compulsive disorder, you got to lock the door and unlock it 5 times in a row before you can leave the house and stuff like that, you can still buy a gun, okay? But if it has been determined that you were a danger to yourself and other people, I should say, and you were committed to an institution against your will for any length of time, then you can't. So you do have to disclose that. If somebody, if you've been pink sheeted, or I guess in some places it's blue sheeted, but you basically, it's when they fill out paperwork and then bring in the cops to take you away to a another facility, a mental health facility. And it happens in urgent cares and emergency rooms all over the country on a regular basis. And the bad part is people can be misdiagnosed as dangerous to themselves or others and kept well beyond their need for medical treatment. And then at the same time, people who really should be in there can fool the doctors or just not present the symptoms that are being displayed at the location where they get initially diagnosed, and suddenly they're they're let go. So they're in there for I think they're allowed to keep them for 72 hours. So you could go into an urgent care declaring yourself to be an alien from the planet Mars, come here to destroy the Earth, and declare your hairdryer to be the space modulator that you're going to use to blow up the Earth, and get put in for 72 hours. And either you could be very serious about having some kind of a bomb and something like that, and it's out there and you're going to use it as soon as you get out, and they don't take you seriously and they refer you for outpatient treatment, or you're talking nonsense because you need outpatient treatment, but they think you really do have a weapon that you don't have, and you get stuck in there for months. And it can be anything like that. Anything from somebody being stalked, talking about the evidence that they're being stalked, and the people that they are talking to about it think they're nuts and call the men in the white coats, to somebody who actually has a need for that kind of treatment, like the young man from the Daniel Penny story. I can't think of his name that we've been talking about.
Neely.
I'm sorry?
Jordan Neely.
Yeah, Jordan Neely, who desperately needed to be put in against his will, just so that he could get the treatment that it would take for him to actually be able to make a more informed decision about his own care and then follow up on that. And that never happened for him, and now he's dead.
Yeah, somebody posted a video of, I'm pretty sure it was him. I don't know. I think it might have been somebody else. But anyway, it's basically the same premise, right? There's some crazy black guy on the subway, and he's, oh my God, he's going to do. Ladies, how would you feel about having to deal with this? Trying to appeal to the
Oh, was that the guy walking back and forth getting in everybody's faces that didn't actually commit any assaults? I
think so.
I
think
saw
so.
That.
The guy was on a fentanyl trip or whatever. But, my response was, this guy is just as likely to be able to kill a man, too.
More
the problem
likely.
is, yeah, right, but they don't care about men, and that's the whole fucking problem.
Yep.
That's the beginning and the end of this. But what are we doing? Appealing to the ladies. How would the ladies feel? Oh my God, don't you want to protect her?
Well, and there's other videos out there like that. Like, there's the chick that is on the train, and I don't know what she was high on, but she suddenly discovered that she was fat. Apparently she was unaware of this up until that moment, and she had a meltdown, grabbing her belly. Oh my God, I'm so fat. Which, it's comical, but at the same time, that's definitely a vulnerable person that needs something. And there was another one that people were saying, oh, this girl's possessed. And she was not possessed. She might have been on meth. She might have been on PCP. She acted really weird. It's one of those drugs that makes you act like your body's not under your control. So your motions are like, instead of you pushing your hand out, your hand is leading your arm, and it looks like that. But the reality is, it's an effect of the drugs, and I've actually seen that effect from drugs in person. unfortunately, around somebody that was also violent and dangerous in the moment because of their reaction to that drug. And I never did find out for sure what they were using either. Just went in the house, locked the door, and waited until they were gone. But in any case, this chick is sitting on the bus next to a guy, and she's doing these weird motions and everything, and then she looks over at him, and her hand shoots over seemingly under its own power and just grabs him by the throat. And he starts defending himself. And of course it wasn't sent out as, oh, how would you feel if you were in this situation? Look at this dangerous person doing dangerous things on the train, because it was a woman. It was whether or not his self-defense was too vehement and enthusiastic, basically, whether he went overboard. And I'm sorry, he could have cold-cocked her and put her on the floor unconscious, and that wouldn't have been overboard. If somebody cuts off the blood flow to your brain, they can kill you in a very short amount of time. And, or they can cause you to pass out, and then another criminal can victimize you while you're passed out. So I don't understand how people go to sleep on public transport. There's no way I would be paranoid the whole time. But, there's a very different attitude when the nut job on the public transport is female instead of male. People think it's funny. Like the lady that I think she was also on a train, subway train, stood there and yelled at all the men around her instead of politely asking people to let her through so she could get off. She's yelling, "Who's gonna be a gentleman? Who's gonna be a gentleman?" At the time, I made a meme out of it. I took random dialogue from some movie about Hitler, and she had that kind of haircut, and every time she moved, her hair moved the way Hitler's hair moved when he was really going at it in his speech, and it fit. It really was horrible how well it fit. It would have sounded like nonsense to anybody who actually spoke German, but because I broke up parts to make it fit, but it was kind of funny watching it. But at the same time, here's this woman standing around yelling at all these men, and you don't know what she's going to do, and you don't know what she's going to falsely accuse people of later. Thank goodness there was video. So all of that, right? But you do have to, if you are buying a firearm, you do have to disclose if you have been involuntarily committed, because there's a difference between just getting mental health treatment, which your gun rights stay intact if you just go to a psychiatrist and you get therapy, or a psychologist and you get therapy, or you go to a psychiatrist and you get treatment for, even if you have a mental health condition that causes perception disorders like visual and auditory hallucinations, or any kind of like the input that you're getting. Somebody might say one string of words and your brain turns it into a different meaning. It's not exactly a hallucination, but it's like your wires are crossed, and that can happen with some perception disorders as well. You could have a personality disorder. You could even be diagnosed as a psychopath, and you can buy a gun as long as you haven't been involuntarily committed. As long as you're in treatment and not in trouble. But the minute that you get into trouble, it becomes a different story. And that's pretty much the only limit. It's not red flag laws. This predates red flag laws. I had to read that form when I bought, oh gosh, what gun was it? We're talking 1993 or 94, somewhere in there. And I don't even have it anymore because it was not great. It was not a great gun. It was just one I could afford. It was like a starter kind of thing to learn to shoot. And so it was a 22. No, it was a 25. Jennings 25. But And when I started having trouble with it jamming, somebody was like, "Oh yeah, that particular one has a reputation for that." And then somebody else was like, "No, you just need to clean it more often." So it just depends on I guess who you talk to about them. But my experience with it wasn't great. But in any case, on that form, it had that question: have you ever been involuntarily committed? And I expected to be asked if I'd ever had mental health treatment, and I expected to have to disclose that I had gone in for mental health treatment because I had an anger problem before, like a few years before that. But nope. Even being diagnosed with an anger problem, which at the time we didn't know was caused by roid rage from medical steroids, I still could buy a gun. All right. So for Hunter Biden to have violated that, he had to have had some things that were bad enough, or at least deemed bad enough by the law, that they were worse than just having a mental health condition and anger management problem, stuff like that. And I think the reason that had been given for you can't buy a gun if you are a drug user was to prevent drug dealers from being able to get away with having guns on their person while they were selling. Which, some of them are users. Some of them never touch the stuff they sell. But, red flag laws are an actual, tar pit. There's very little good that they're going to do, but you can sink in there real fast, get sucked into the muck of how they will work on people who don't necessarily present a threat on the basis of subjective opinions expressed by other people. And kind of drown in that, because once you've been flagged, your rights start getting compromised. It becomes very hard to get them back. Right? So, with regard to Hunter Biden and the gun stuff, that's one thing, right? But some things I want you to think about, and this is going to be, some of it's, I will admit to a little conspiracy theory here. This timeline that we're looking at goes back to 2010. You can see that in preparation for all of this, they get the Hunter Biden laptop in 2010. And then he starts getting, some lenience there. And I'm thinking that, the way everybody talks about Joe Biden, like he is the pawn of the Obama family. But think about where Obama got his political start. Right? He did nothing in service prior to becoming a senator. He was part of an organization called Acorn that got busted for some illegal practices regarding voter registration and stuff in Chicago. And then the next thing you know, he's a senator. And then in the Senate, he spent most of his career, which I think was just one term, voting present. Not voting for things, not voting against things, just voting present. He just basically put in his time and then ran for president on a combination of the Hope and Change slogan and allegations of isms and phobias against anybody who questioned his being the best candidate for the office, right? He didn't really have any great policy offerings. He didn't really have any great promises that he made. Obamacare was just repackaged Hillary Care, and everybody hated it when it was Hillary Care. So they kind of just used Obama to get that through. And the whole purpose of his candidacy may have just been to use allegations of the isms and phobias to keep people from criticizing the policies that they were shoving through, right? And the whole time that he's in there, he's got Joe Biden with him. So just imagine if you wanted to be a crime lord, a money launderer, an extortionist, if you wanted to use a position of government as a means of extorting other governments and corporations in other countries for money. What better disguise could you have than being a bumbling idiot that everybody thinks is somebody else's puppet?
Yeah.
Right? And it makes me wonder if Joe Biden spent all that time, maybe he spent his whole life pretending to be a bumbling idiot, because he looked like one for his whole life. Maybe he spent his whole life pretending to be a bumbling idiot while engaging in corrupt practices the entire time. And this presidency, where he has publicly appeared to be slowly descending from ordinary bumbling idiocy to bumbling idiot old age and bumbling idiot senility. Like, maybe that whole time he's all there and he's just using that to look like somebody that people should feel sorry for instead of angry at, and to look like somebody that could have stumbled into all this instead of doing it on purpose. Because when we go through this, there's a lot here. And maybe, I kind of wonder even, if Hunter Biden's dysfunction may have been a similar ploy. Because, everybody feels sorry for the guy. And, I've even fallen for feeling sorry for the guy as being, this poor drug addict that's been exploited by his family. But what if that's not what's going on? What if the Biden family are all just cynical exploiters of social attitudes as a shield against criticism of their crimes? Maybe they used the Obama candidacy and presidency. Maybe they used public attitude toward the vulnerability of drug addicts. Maybe they used... Biden's popularity as a senator was never fabulous, but it was always better than it could have been, because feminists liked him because of the Violence Against Women Act and the crime bill. So, as we're reading through this, I want you to consider that. I also want you to consider... Remember we talked about, in some previous episodes, how the current president of Ukraine was installed by the U.S. government. And he was installed without the actual public of Ukraine getting much of a say in it at all. And when large segments of the population that were Russian nationals objected, the United States hired foreign nationals who had been involved in the U.S. proxy war against Russia in Afghanistan. So basically, religious Islamic fighters that had nothing to do with Ukraine to go in and kill off the objectors, which, I've called that a genocide, and I'm going to continue to call it a genocide until somebody can prove to me that it included people who were not Russian nationals, or at least not of Russian national origin. So you have the Zelensky installation during the Obama administration, and if you consider that it might be that Obama was Biden's puppet instead of the other way around, then Biden gets the benefits, and that genocide happens. That genocide is committed, and all the stuff with Burisma goes down in the same time period. And then fast forward to today, and we're in this military conflict that we're involved in without being involved in, because we're the little guy outside of the fight, which is actually bigger than the combatant that we're standing next to, handing him rocks and telling him to throw them at the other guy, and pretending to not be involved while we keep giving him bigger and bigger rocks. Right? Eventually, the other guy is going to hit the person handing over the rocks. That's pretty much common sense. And, I've talked about this in terms of apex fallacy. And I've talked about this in terms of double standards between the elites and the common guy. But who goes if the United States ends up having to send actual people to fight? Or who gets stuck defending the country if we end up under attack here? Right? It's not going to be feminists. It's not, especially not feminist women. Feminist women are going to turn around and suddenly become tradcons real fast.
Mm-hmm.
And feminist men couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. Even the ones that think they're tough guys that want to browbeat other men and threaten them and stuff, which I've seen on X, they're not going to fight. They're not going to support the country, and they're not going to do anything else to contribute either. You won't see them contributing to USO. You won't see them do any of that. They'll be the ones out there with protest signs whining about it, while your sons or you get drafted or pressured, or your sons that have gone into the military for college funds get sent over. That's how that goes. So as we're going through this timeline, I kind of want you to think about those things, and tell me if you think I'm blowing smoke up your ass when I make that conspiracy theory, because it really, to me, kind of looks like Biden had a very long-term plan here. So you've seen the timeline up on the screen here, that this does go back to 2010 was when this laptop from hell was originally registered. 2013 was the first time lenience was shown to Hunter in terms of him being not really qualified for a position, and he gets it anyway. And it wasn't even just with some corporation, right? He received 2 waivers, one for his age and one for a previous cocaine offense. So drugs already. And in order to be commissioned as an ensign in the Navy Reserves to a sedentary post in the Public Affairs Unit that maybe somebody better qualified could have had, but was maybe put into a more risky position because Hunter Biden had that job.
Mm.
First day off duty, he fails a drug test.
Unbelievable.
Right? So, just to point out, in 2010, that was during Obama's first term. In 2013, that was during Obama's second term. 2013, December 2, 2013, Hunter flew out with Joe Biden on Air Force 2 to China to meet with his business partners, which included executives at the state-owned Bank of China, and introduced Joe to one of them. So shortly after, like same year he's put in this position, there he is introducing, the man who had nothing to do with his son's business to 2 of his business partners, including a Communist Party insider that was responsible for controlling the flow of money in the country. Right. So in China, when at that time we were just learning about, I want to say it was real close to then, we were just learning about Sesame Credit, or Credit Sesame. We initially thought it was called Sesame Credit. Credit Sesame, which in China is their social credit system, where they basically get told what they can and can't buy. They get told what they can and can't say. They get told, where and how they can and can't live, who they may or may not hang out with, and everything. They get a social credit score based on all of those factors. And there's been videos that have come out since, like we talked about this on Honey Badger Radio episodes back during the first incarnation of Gamergate, when there's a lot more attention to consumer issues at the time, that China was setting it up so that people might not even have access to their paychecks, their funds in the bank, and they didn't have cash. Everything was electronic. So if you, for instance, have a really low social credit score because you have criticized the CCP, or you hang out with somebody who has criticized the CCP, or you bought a PlayStation instead of a washing machine, right? Then maybe you might not be able to travel outside of China, or you might not be able to travel within China, or you might not be able to buy any kind of luxuries, or you might not even be able to buy toiletries, or you might not even be able to buy food. And they were mostly eliminating cash. You can still withdraw cash there and spend it, but you still have to have a valid credit score to withdraw your cash. And so if you are banned from spending your money, how do you survive? Right? So that's what was going on at the time. That's what, when Hunter Biden introduced Joe Biden to a business partner that included executives at the state-owned Bank of China, he's introducing him to somebody who was in control of the application and enforcement of that social credit system. Somebody who was in control of denying people the right to go to the grocery store and buy food because maybe they said the wrong things online, or maybe their lifestyle wasn't state approved. Right? And that's clear back during Obama's second term. So this goes on 2014. I'll make sure I haven't had anybody comment on this yet. We have so Meredith G gave us $5 at 7:22 p.m. So I'm a little late in reading it. HBR Talk 355. Isn't it interesting that Biden was the architect of VAWA, the first version of USA Patriot that he couldn't get past before 9/11, well into his own criminal career? Oh yeah. And the first version of the USA. He actually worked with Republicans on that because Republicans had that kind of going in the work too. Progressive Republicans were really pushing for that. And the crime bill was kind of, it had some of the things they wanted to put in the Patriot Act. Right? But, yeah, 9/11 seemed to make it much easier to push that shit through. Just saying. But yeah, so here we are, 2014, and early in the year, we have, he gets administratively discharged for cocaine use, which, to me, I think that means that he had done what he was going to do in that position, and they didn't need him anymore in that position, and so they were allowed to discharge him for cocaine use. And then in February, or late February, that's when the installment of Zelensky happens. After months of Western-backed protests, Ukrainian parliament voted to oust the parliament, not the public, voted to oust Viktor Yanukovych. And in the following days, Yanukovych sought exile in Russia. Right after that, Hunter Biden sends an email. There's this article, and I tried to get this article, and it's not readily available online. You have to sign up for the site, and you can't even just sign up for the site. You have to sign up, or try to sign up, and then they will contact you. And I haven't been contacted yet, so I don't know. I'm not gonna hold my breath. I'm not familiar with the organization, and so I tried to sign up as a journalist because it's a story that I would want to cover or comment on, and it looks like it's possible to get it, but I don't know. They may decide that I have to pay a fee or something, and it may not be worth it for just that one story. So, yeah. But yeah, instead of being ousted from his position being a big deal for Hunter Biden, he emails Archer this article. Joe Biden lurks behind every U.S. action on Ukraine, this part was what got me thinking, maybe Obama was Biden's puppet and not the other way around. Archer responded, "There is a unique timing here in this upcoming opportunity. One door closes and another opens." So this is where the Burisma stuff happens. And I don't know how familiar everybody is with this, but I think everybody's heard the speech that Biden made, where he was talking about the investigation into his son's dealings with this company. The company was co-founded by an advisor to the previous administration, and suddenly, Joe Biden's son is working with this company. He had no qualifications, just like with the Navy thing. He's a drug addict. He's been essentially dishonorably discharged, but they call it administratively discharged for cocaine use. And this company's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to hire that guy for this position." And there you go. Great hiring practices there, guys.
Yeah, meanwhile, you need every qualification and degree under the sun just to get a, oh my God.
Minimum wage job. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh, Jesus.
Well, I mean, you look at my job, right? If I do have chronic pain, okay? If I were prescribed a narcotic pain medicine to deal with my chronic pain, if I wasn't allergic to them, which I am, I would actually not be able to do my job. They could fire me for that, even if it was prescribed. If I was prescribed Xanax for a mental health condition, I could be cut out of my job. Company policy is allowed to determine that I'm ineligible for that job based on the use of any drug that they don't allow to be in my system when I'm trying to do that job, because I have to drive my clients places, because I'm taking care of people who can't drive themselves around and do things like that, for the most part. Once in a while you have somebody who needs care, but they are actually capable of all of the functions needed to have a driver's license and drive a vehicle, and better drivers than most normal women, so...
Wait, describe that? What's a normal woman?
So, I had a moment of normalcy tonight. So for our after show tonight, I found a whole bunch of different things, and I couldn't decide between them. So the first part of our after show is going to be picking what the after show is going to be about, because I'm having a woman evening. And
I'm really
had a woman
interested
moment.
in. I'm really interested in what it is about women that makes us so indecisive. Like we never know what we want to eat for dinner, or you know what I mean. Just
Yeah.
maybe is that just me? But it seems to be a female trait that seems to be quite a bit indecisive
It's
when it comes to
because
just the
we
most
can
menial
be.
things.
Being
That
indecisive
you
is a
know what? That's
luxury,
right.
right?
Yes.
Guys grow up. They have to learn to make certain decisions quickly and
Hmm.
not look back and not have 50 contingency plans because they have to execute their choice in the moment and
Hmm.
be prepared to just let go of contingencies because their choice puts them on a trajectory that the contingencies no longer are available. And
Yeah.
they have to learn that as they're growing up because they fight with each other. They get involved in sports that don't give you the opportunity to change your mind all the time. They take a lot of risks and learn that if you're going to pick up that thing with the huge pinchers, you better be ready to deal with getting bit. Um, you know, we used to play with crawdaddies when I was a kid because we lived close enough to a part of the Miami Erie Canal system that we could play on the towpath. That's TOW because that's they used to pull the boats with tow ropes attached to harnesses on mules. That they had a path along the side of the canal. That's the towpath, and there's a little wooded area around that. And now, and there's the canal is more of a trickling creek in the area where I grew up, but little crawdaddies live in there. Not even big enough to to have a crab boil with them. Um, but one way of picking them up is to just stick your finger down there. Those things are so aggressive that they'll just grab a hold of it with their pinchers. And the little bitty ones, it feels weird, but it doesn't hurt. But every so often you find like the monster crawdaddy among all of the little bitty crawdaddies, and that one can break the skin. And the first time you find it, it scares the crap out of you, and you end up flinging it into a tree or something, trying to get away from the pinching. Except the boys, they'd be like, "Wow, that really hurts. This guy's really got a good grip," and I'm sitting there going, "You're bleeding." And so boys are different. They learn that stuff, and they develop toughness differently, and we get to be indecisive because we have that luxury of if we want a do-over, or if we engage in something harmful like flinging the poor little creature that we just harassed into a tree. People aren't like, "Oh, you're so mean to that animal." It's, "Oh, are you okay? Is your finger bleeding? Do you need a Band-Aid? We better wash that off." It's like an incredibly cruel thing to do, actually, to harass an animal, and then when it defends itself, you throw it into a tree.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Oh.
yeah, so that's why women are so indecisive, and I'm usually not, but like this time I am. So I may throw a bunch of stuff at everybody and see if it sticks. But we'll see. I do have like a whole bunch of stuff. I have a Discord where I actually just keep things that I want to pay attention to, that nobody else has access to it. So in any case, so we are. We're at the point where first Hunter Biden actually Archer gets involved with Burisma. Then let's see, April 12th, the White House releases a statement announcing Joe Biden's going to visit Ukraine in 10 days to consult on the latest steps to enhance Ukraine's short and long-term energy security. And remember, this is where that money came in from that speech. The $1 million or $6 million or whatever it was. Hunter emailed Archer an extremely long memo about leveraging Joe's position as the public face of the U.S. administration's policy in Ukraine. The Burisma contract should begin now, not after the upcoming visit of my guy. That should include a retainer in the range of, and then he starts getting in there with how much money they should be paying him, and additional fees, and more work to go to the basically another business of theirs, right? So then we have, let's see, let's go to the next page. Go to the next page. It's going to be slow, sorry. But it's not as bad as it was trying to deal with the download, which wouldn't give me these pages because all it gave me was the sex crimes. So Archer visits Joe at the White House under the pretense of a school project, his son's school project. Hunter joins the board of Burisma. No experience, no qualifications, nothing to do with the energy sector, and doesn't speak Ukrainian. Joe goes to Ukraine. During the flight, Joe's staff briefs reporters about the U.S. plan to help Ukraine extract their unconventional gas resources, for which Burisma held the current license. And remember, Burisma was attached to the previous administration. Archer gives an interview, later posted on Burisma's website, about how Archer knows the U.S. Secretary of State. That was John Kerry, and Joe Biden. And remember, John Kerry had his own history of corruption as well, and including self-glorification when he came back from Vietnam and lied to Congress about his fellow soldiers, for which everybody should hound him forever. Like, that should be his legacy. The guy that came back and not only threw his fellow soldiers under the bus, but based on lies. So again, this is all happening in rapid succession, right? Archer gives this interview. Joe is reported on as the public face of the administration's handling of Ukraine. Authorities in the UK freeze $23 million from London bank accounts of Zolchevsky, one of Burisma's key owners. Burisma publicly announces that Hunter has joined its board. Burisma posts a photo of Joe and Archer at the White House on their website. Joe's lawyer demands they take it down.
Wow.
You can't have that up there, that shows us together, blah, blah, blah. And then Archer starts committing violations of... FARA is the act that says that you have to be registered as a foreign... God, I can't think of what it's called, but basically an operative within the government in regard to foreign activities. And he wasn't registered. He's an unregistered agent on behalf of Burisma. And so he's advocating to U.S. officials at the U.S. Embassy in Kiev as an unregistered agent. If I remember right, we had some people that were convicted for that, for actually doing things they were allowed to do because they were part of an administration and they were registered. Right. There's a bunch of footnotes in this, and I'm not going to try to go over all of them because, to be honest, some of them you can't click on the links and they have to be... These ones I can, but we may go back and read some of this. But I think unless people come back and say, I really don't understand the Burisma stuff, we need to get more in depth on that. This is all just review of stuff that's been reported the last few years that I think was so broadly covered. Like, even left-wing media talked about some of this. I think everybody already knows about most of this, but we're just... I didn't mean to turn the page, sorry. Just going through this, just to remember and remind everybody, this is the progression of events, right? Hunter Biden violates FARA, lobbies the U.S. State Department on behalf of Zlochevsky to strong-arm the Mexican government in an effort to secure safe passage for Zlochevsky's trip to Mexico, because he was worried about being denied entry. And let's see, I'm going to skip this part. There's a bunch of little details about different people within the company that he was involved with, that different things occurred and different people went to jail, different people, different steps of his involvement. But you can see all these things involve Hunter Biden oiling gears, right? Smoothing the way, getting hurdles out of the way that most people would normally face in regard to changing their location, going to a different country, getting access to officials to lobby for something, getting access to the White House to lobby for something, getting consideration, in other words, where policy is concerned, and also where policy enforcement is going to be concerned, because there's not just whether or not there is a policy, there's also whether or not you're subject to it. And if you are, Biden says nobody is above the law, well, if you are friends with his son Hunter, you might be above the law. So here we have Hunter and Archer, along with their ever-present handler Eric Sherwin, received real-time White House conference call notes regarding Joe's upcoming travel to Ukraine from Blue Star Strategies, whose leaders, Sally Painter and Karen Tramontano, were illegally representing Burisma by not registering as agents. Again, the same thing that we saw members of the Trump administration prosecuted for. Let's see if it's not on this page yet. But so at that point, Joe Biden did have an anti-corruption message that he was putting out there. New York Times published a story about Hunter and the investigation into Burisma by Ukrainian prosecutors, and in that story is the quote, "The credibility of the vice president's anti-corruption message may have been undermined by the association of his son Hunter Biden with one of Ukraine's largest natural gas companies, Burisma Holdings, with its owner, Mykola Zlochevsky, who Joe Biden would not say was or was not corrupt." So we don't see specifics about the actual firing of the prosecutor until we see the White House releasing a statement praising Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko for firing the Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin mere weeks after Joe threatened Poroshenko by withholding $1 billion, not $1 million, it was $1 billion loan guarantee if Shokin, who was investigating Burisma at the time, were not fired. So there we have sort of the smoking gun, I guess you can say, in regard to Joe's corruption in Ukraine. You have the administration that he's with is manipulating who's going to be involved as leadership in Ukraine. You have the United States holding money over the head of leadership in Ukraine, and you have this really weird hinky relationship between the son of the vice president and a company that is being investigated for corruption. And all of that seems to have been just straight up manipulated by Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. It doesn't seem to have involved Obama much at all. Like, I haven't really seen Obama's name here much. This just took place during the Obama administration. But Joe Biden indicated that he, as the vice president, had the power to withhold that money. So I don't think he was acting as anybody's puppet in that moment. I think he's the mafia boss in that scenario. Now we go to the next page. There we go. This is being slow. So now we're in 2019, right? So we've fast forwarded a bit here. Hunter's drunk. He drops 3 Apple laptops off at the Mac shop for repair. One couldn't be salvaged. One needed an external keyboard, and the third is the laptop from hell, I think, and could be transferred to an external drive, which Hunter agreed to provide. And then he comes back with the drive. So Mac Isaac completes the data recovery, and Joe announces his candidate for President of the United States, candidacy. Trump calls Ukrainian President Zelensky. And by the way, we looked at the previous... see if I can go back to the previous page here really quick. Not without doing that. And of course it's going to be really slow, but we're going to go back to the bottom of the page here. Remember, as all this is going on, alright, John Flynn, an advisor to the vice president, emailed ordinarily classified notes about Joe's impending phone call to Hunter's business email addresses. It's kind of interesting, same name as the general that was accused of a FARA violation for doing his job. But they were playing fast and loose with information here, right? So, go back to this. I keep double-clicking like that's going to do anything. Alright, so Trump has announced his candidacy. Oh no, Trump has called President Volodymyr Zelensky. President Zelensky. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi announced the commencement of a presidential impeachment inquiry into Trump's call. Right? So we have just a few months there in between. He's literally just making a call to Zelensky. Nothing is said about what the call was about. So, then again, remember what we just read that just happened, right? Prior to that, Joe Biden held $1 billion loan over their heads to make them get rid of an investigation into the company that his son worked for. Right? That's going to be important if you hadn't paid attention to this story before. Trump makes this phone call. Pelosi announced that they're going to impeach him for the phone call, the contents of the phone call. That was in September. In October, we have this repairman for the computer contacts the FBI in Albuquerque about the contents, the illegal contents on this computer. And the FBI rebuffs him and tells him to lawyer up. Agent Wilson calls him to request contact information for his son. Agent Wilson and his colleague, and I looked this up, so it's, the DZ is J. So Agent Gilak went to Mac Isaac's home and spoke to him in his living room about the laptop. They're asking him about child pornography on the laptop. They're asking him to, give a timeline of events leading up to reaching out to the FBI. Gilak asks Mac asked Isaac for the serial number of the external drive, and he gives all the information. They appear at the shop in December and hand him a subpoena for the laptop. After telling him, no, we don't want this, then they hand him a subpoena for the laptop and the external drive and the data, the laptop, or I guess it was just the drive, not another laptop that the data had been transferred to, but just the drive. When leaving, Gilak tells Isaac, in our experience, nothing ever happens to those that don't talk about these things. Can you imagine having an FBI agent that you just reported a crime to tell you that? In our experience, nothing ever happens to those that don't talk about these things. Like, that is so cleverly worded, right, to avoid being accused of making a threat. I'm not telling you to keep your mouth shut, but I am telling you that it's not dangerous to keep your mouth shut. Right? I'm not telling you that there's going to be any retaliation here. I'm just telling you that there won't be retaliation if you keep your mouth shut. Like, that's mafia tactics right there. It's a nice business you got there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it. Why don't you pay us for insurance and we'll protect you? And who are you protecting me from? Us?
Right. Insurance against what we're going to do to you if you don't fucking pay us your insurance money.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Yeah. Mac Isaac was so thrilled that the laptop was leaving his shop that he didn't hardly notice the odd instructions or the thinly veiled threat. An hour later, Agent Gilak called Mac Isaac as the agents inexplicably needed help accessing the drive, indicating that the drive was never sent to the FBI forensics lab near Quantico, Virginia. So they didn't send it to Quantico. That's kind of interesting, right? But it just blows my mind. FBI agents threatening a guy for reporting a crime. In 2019 would have been around, it was really close to the time when I got, so before ICMI 2019, so it would have either been 2018 or 2019, late 2018, early 2019, I got into an argument with a map, which I won't, like, pedo acceptance advocate is what I call them. They call themselves minor attracted people, right? I get into this argument with this was a woman who claimed to identify as male, but then said, I don't have to transition for that. And it was just like, it was one of those, individuals that the 72 genders, the whole spectrum of anything goes. I can wear a frilly dress and still call myself a dude and blah blah blah. No surgery, no nothing. I just identify as male. At the same time, is arguing that it's a sexuality, it's normal, that everybody goes through it, and some people just never grow out of it, and blah blah blah. And I'm knocking it down, every single thing that this person says, with information from the psychology manuals, information from the diagnostic statistical manual on the disorder known as pedophilia, and so on. And she got mad and blocked me. And then about a day or two later, an anonymous account that appeared to have just been started sends me an image that was so bad I will not describe it to any of you. Not in public, not in private. And once I was able to gather myself, because it was one of those things that if you've been victimized, most of the time I don't get triggered by stuff, but that one caused a panic attack. And I reported it to Twitter, and Twitter suspended me for a week for reporting it for harassment. I was suspended for harassment for reporting it. So I reported it to the FBI. And I was hoping, you know, at the very least, that it would get Twitter told that they can't suspend people for reporting this stuff, right? Like, please do something about this. This is horrendous. This image is a child being harmed. And you can tell that this child was just terrified and in pain. And it's one of those, like, the image still, it makes me angry thinking about it. And nobody ever did anything that I knew about. I never got any information back. Nobody ever contacted me, said, hey, you know, can you tell us more about this account? Nothing. When my suspension was over, the account was gone, the DM was gone, everything was pretty much covered up. So I have no idea whether there was any repercussion, whether anybody was held accountable, or whether it was just swept under the rug. But it looked like, to me, like Twitter blocked me from using their website and while they covered for this individual, because I never saw any information come out of anybody getting busted for sending out this kind of image in DMs. You know, and then I couldn't even block the account because it was gone. So, like, they were just heck of a situation. But at the same time that that's going on, there's the FBI literally threatening a businessman for reporting that type of crime. Like, how dare you tell us about this? And we also later learned, if remember, as that's happening, the FBI was going after Trump during his administration on the Russiagate conspiracy theory, right? It was reported, and we reported on the news stories. We talked about those on HBR News, and I think we might have talked about it on HBR Talk. The FBI took resources from their division that investigates child exploitation like that, and applied them to the investigation of Trump on the fake Russia conspiracy. So my thinking is that nothing was ever done about that individual, and nothing was ever done about that image or any other images created or owned by that individual. Nobody ever tried to track down the people that hurt that kid, and nobody ever tried to find out if the kid was still alive and still needed help. And it's a big if, because when they get done with a kid, they don't just let him go. So now we're in 2021. Mac Isaac was forced to start a new business near Denver. Hunter finally admitted after 6 months of repeated denials that the laptop was could be authentic. He certainly could be authentic, but it also could have been Russian intelligence, right? An Obama appointee, Judge Beth Bloom, dismissed Mac Isaac's defamation case in Florida against Twitter with prejudice, ordered Mac Isaac to pay Twitter's legal fees. Now, Twitter had referred to the laptop as hacked materials. Right? Hunter Biden took the laptop there specifically to have those materials transferred to a readable device, because the laptop was probably bricked or something. I'm doubting. I have no doubt that there was something in the electronics that didn't belong there, just based on the partying images that are in this report. I have a feeling that he didn't treat that laptop very carefully.
No.
But it might have been sticky.
Ew.
It's just like, yeah, nasty.
Yeah, I was thinking when we were talking about it last week, or whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, just for fingerprints alone, like I wouldn't want my fingerprints on that goddamn thing.
I know.
Never mind what other substances might be like living or growing on it. Ugh.
Well, I
Yuck.
mean, that's probably why he was so glad to get it out of his shop. I would have been glad to not have it too.
Yeah.
Right? I'm thankful to have never encountered it directly. I don't like having the report. Like, it's the stuff in the report is disturbing. There's a lot of disturbing stuff in the report, honestly. And like I said, I'm not gonna go over it. How do I say this without innuendo? I'm not going to say that way I would normally. I'm not going to go into it detail by detail, because the details are awful. But this particular timeline I will. But so just remember, and it's not just Twitter, because Facebook did the same thing too, right? So the New York Post, I think it was, reported on the laptop, and Twitter banned them, suspended them for violating Twitter's hacked materials policy. Right? You can't publish hacked materials, which I think was started around the controversy over women's images, actresses' images getting taken from their own cell phones, right, like their nudes, their lewds and stuff, that if they sexted with their partners and all that jazz, like send your husband booby pictures, and next thing you know, they're on the internet. Which, if you're using an electronic device to send stuff, you should know that it's vulnerable. Anything that you send is going to be vulnerable. Encryption helps, but I don't think any of that was encrypted, right?
Well, I mean, even like Snapchat, like the whole appeal of Snapchat is that you post a picture and it goes away. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, no.
No, it doesn't.
Nope. Well, and even 4chan. 4chan's supposed to be temporary, right? But there's archives of all kinds of threads. So, and it doesn't necessarily stop if someone posts evidence that they have committed a crime. So there's been a few instances where somebody has posted evidence that they committed a crime, and they got tracked down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, but Twitter publicly had stated that this laptop was hacked materials, that this laptop copy was hacked materials, when it was actually something that Hunter Biden paid him to do. And the only reason it ever became public was because he discovered there were crimes on it, and he sent it to the FBI, and he exposed it to the news media.
Well, I mean, the whole hack thing is just it's a bullshit term anyway. It's like saying, oh, well, this guy got this evidence that I committed all of these crimes, but I didn't give him my password, So all of the stuff that he then found is now fraudulent. Oh no, that's not how it works, right? Like he tapped into your fucking laptop, but you left that shit on there.
Yeah.
This is you, buddy. These are your fucking footprints.
And it doesn't absolve you of guilt for the crimes.
That's
the thing.
Not in any way, shape, fashion, or form. It shouldn't, right. But this is Joe Biden's economy.
Right. Well, and it wouldn't stop you from getting prosecuted if
right.
if that information became public because somebody hacked it. Only the cops are barred from illegally searching your stuff, and
right.
whether or not the evidence they gather can be used against you in court can be compromised because they did that. But if your neighbor does it and then he publishes it all over social media and the cops get it from there, that's not the same. Right? Now it's public information. It's not something that the cops are barred from using against you. Right. And so the real question in that case was not about whether Hunter Biden was culpable for the things that were on his laptop. It was whether the question in that case was whether Twitter was culpable for lying about Mac Isaac. And in my opinion, they were. And they lied about him because he didn't hack anything. He was asked. He was actually paid to get that information from that computer.
Right.
So it's not hacked. Hacked is when somebody steals your password or figures it out or intercepts a message that you've sent over some form of transmission and unencrypts it, or it's not encrypted in the first place, and they publicize something or take your banking information and get into your bank and take your money or anything like that. That's hacked. They get into your computer system and look at things that are password protected or otherwise private. That's hacked. But if it's something that you've paid somebody to do, they're providing a service. Now, if you can't get in there because you forgot your password, you might ask them to hack your system. But there's a significant difference between that and somebody just using access to a system of transmission of information from one place to another to get people's private information that they didn't ask them to access and didn't give them permission to access. That's completely different story. And that's basically what Twitter made out like this guy did, and he did nothing of the sort. And he just it was a terrible injustice that he had to pay their legal fees, honestly. Yeah. So then, November 4th, the FBI conducts a raid on the homes of 2 people linked to Project Veritas in an effort to find incriminating evidence about their exposure of Ashley Biden's diary. So again, they're not concerned about any crimes that might have been revealed in Ashley Biden's diary. They're more concerned about going after the whistleblowers.
Yep.
Then they raided a couple days later with a battering ram, by the way. They went in with a battering ram on James O'Keefe's apartment, looking for the diary. So you have the laptop and you have the diary, and you have the FBI engaging in very shady practices of evidence suppression and witness intimidation. So 2022, just a couple years ago, January 30th, New York Post and Breitbart published stories about a subpoena from the District of Delaware to J.P. Morgan that Marco Polo had received from a whistleblower, the subpoena for the Biden's wire transfers from the Bank of China. Remember, one of the first things that happened in this chain of event was Hunter Biden introducing Joe Biden to his business partners who included officials from the Bank of China. Wonder what they were setting up at the time. Right. February 1st, the editorial board of America's oldest newspaper called for a special counsel to be appointed to investigate Hunter, citing the subpoena Marco Polo provided to the publication. March 12th, Mac Isaac revealed that the IRS and an executive agency in Delaware harassed him. Being harassed by the IRS, by the way, is no small thing. Like, my family's experienced that over a clerical error. The IRS doesn't play around. They're monsters. I have nothing good to say about the IRS. They're not helpful when you actually are trying to do the right thing. And when they think their wrongdoing is your fault, they go after you as if you withheld tax payments for 30 years. And even when they know they're in the wrong, they will still strong-arm you. We literally had them extort money from us on the basis that they were accusing my grandfather of not paying money that we could prove that he paid. And they're like, well, you better pay us because during the interim, if you fight this, we'll jail him, and he's old, and he'll probably die before the case is over. He'll die in jail, so you might as well just pay us. That was the way we were treated, right? And that was just over their clerical error. Can you imagine if they were harassing you at the behest of the Biden crime family to shut you up about a crime?
Well, here's one thing that I haven't heard Trump say, and I would like this to be addressed as well, because thanks to Mr. Biden, we now have 187,000 new employees of the IRS. What the fuck are we gonna do with them? You know what I mean?
Trump can address that with 2 words. Can you guess what they are?
No.
There's 2 favorite words, man.
Get out.
You're fired.
You're fired.
Yeah, he's been talking about, like, one of his promises was to overhaul the IRS. I hope he does it. Honestly, I'm not going to have a lot of pity for government officials, government bureaucrats that are forced to reevaluate their career paths because they no longer have one available in government. Mocking Moniker says that's 3 words because 1 is a contraction. Well, no, a contraction is considered a single word.
Yes.
It's a single word with a meaning that indicates the 2 words that have been mashed together. So, and when you write it as 1 word. You don't put a space in between. You put an apostrophe. So, it's still 2 words. But yeah, I am hoping that he follows through on that. I am also hoping he follows through on that with I beat you with my legal mumbo jumbo. It's etymology, it's not legal. Not illegal either. But I'm also hoping that he does the same with some other government bureaucracies that are particularly scary to families when they start getting harassed by them, like Child Protective Services. Because there's 2 ways that agency needs to be reformed. And one of them involves dealing with situations where the people in the agency are actually biased against an abused child. And that's happened. I've seen that happen in person. And I've also seen it happen in person where the agents are biased against parents that are not abusive. And they allow their biases to prevent them from looking at the evidence and dealing with the case in a straightforward manner. And you end up with kids who are in genuinely scary, abusive, dangerous situations being left there and families having to fight tooth and nail for kids to be with family instead of foster parents, things like that. And at the other end of it, then, you have circumstances where kids are taken out of situations that are not dangerous and put into situations that at the very least are unfamiliar, where the individuals involved are far less dedicated to them than their family was. So it really is a horrible setup right now. People have no recourse when the caseworkers are biased or dangerous to the family or anything like that. Caseworkers get vindictive if you don't just go along with everything they say, and it can be hell for a family to get targeted by that agency, especially if nobody did anything wrong and the people in the agency are trying to make a case anyway. And I've seen them not only retaliate against families for exercising their right to due process, I've seen them actually retaliate against witnesses where the family that's facing allegations goes to court, and they take witnesses that have been in their home when things did or did not happen. They've seen their child rearing capability, they're familiar with the family and so on. And once they find out who the witnesses are, Child Protective Services starts targeting their households too. Oh, you have children also? Well, we're going to investigate you since you're a witness in this other case. And it's not considered witness intimidation. It's not considered harassment because it's a government agency doing what it was intended to do. There have been circumstances where just for being a witness in somebody else's CPS case, people have had their kids taken out of their homes and had to fight to get them back.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So you have the IRS, you have Child Protective Services, you have various aspects of health and human resources that have these kind of issues where the intention behind the creation of the department or the agency was to perform a specific function as part of the workings of the government, or to protect the public, or to protect a vulnerable segment of the public. And then you get people in there that are corrupt themselves, that are arrogant, that have personality disorders and things like that, and they really become the opposite of what the agency was intended to do. The IRS was intended to enforce the law and deal with questions of, what am I supposed to do and to make sure that I'm paying what I owe and not paying what I don't owe. And in our case, they forced us to pay what my grandfather had already paid and therefore did not owe. So, it's a hell of a thing. And there's no recourse. There was nothing we could do about it. So we get back to Mac Isaac revealing that they harassed him. New York Times grudgingly admitted that the Biden laptop was authentic, March 16. And again, the laptop's been under discussion now for 3 years, because this is 2022, and it came out in 2019. So 2022, 2 years after Biden takes office, they admit the laptop is authentic. The laptop that should have affected or had an opportunity to affect the election. Marco Polo launches a keyboard searchable database, BidenLaptopEmails.com, which contains more than 128,000 emails from the abandoned device. June 8th, 2022, New York Post reported that Marco Polo had gained access to a backup file of Hunter Biden's iPhone. So this is the other thing. One of the things Hunter Biden did, and I don't know if he realized that he was compromising his own security when he did it. It's a very convenient thing to be able to do, right? But he linked his laptop to his iPhone, and Apple keeps a backup of your iPhone. So if something happens to your phone, and you have stuff on it you really can't do without, you can get it back, right? And it's great if you don't have illegal shit on your phone, but not so good if you're involved in crimes. But in linking his laptop, that meant that Apple would also have the laptop. So, yeah, the Hunter phone, or the iPhone, was stored on the abandoned laptop. So this basically kind of shows, dang it, I didn't want to do that, an element of stupidity as well. There's a lot of criminality. There's also an element of stupidity here.
I get the feeling Hunter's trying to fuck up. Does anyone else get that sense that Hunter's been in the palm of the big guy?
Mm-hmm.
Ever since he's been old enough to hold a pen, and because he's never been presented with any boundaries, the kind of normal boundaries that a parent would set their children. I get the feeling Hunter's been like, I mean, it almost seems like it's not a coincidence that he's left 2 different laptops in 2 different places. It's like he's trying to get caught.
Yeah, like a cry
just to
for
see
help.
if he can. Just because he knows he can get away with it, so he's just trying to do whatever will get the big guy's attention, and it didn't work in the end because the big guy pardoned him for everything.
Yeah.
And Hunter's still there going, please, Daddy, give me some attention. Don't just pardon me. Give me some boundaries. No, you're just gonna. All right, yeah, you need this next big paycheck from Ukraine and China and whatever. Okay, well, whatever. Man, like, we take the piss out of Hunter Biden a lot, but I wouldn't want to be Hunter Biden. Can you even imagine that?
Yeah,
Can
no,
you
I
even
can't.
imagine what that's like? Good Lord.
I cannot imagine what that's like, because I had a great dad. You know, my dad was everything a kid could want in a parent, and I would have loved it if he could have lived to be in his 90s. It's not in the it's not in the genetic code of that side of the family to live to your 90s in a world where the diet is as fucked up as the American diet is. But it sure would have been nice to have him around, just to visit with and all that stuff. But no, he's gone. Yeah, and of course, Joe Biden played a part in that too. So, not even gonna go there any further. So yeah, we have pretty much established in this. There was the corruption. This was not just a thing that the Biden family stumbled into and took advantage of. There was a long-term plan here, right? Obama. I've always felt like Obama wasn't elected; he was installed. You know, and the reason I say that is because people didn't vote for Obama. They voted against being called racist. They voted for the idea that it's time for our first black president. They voted to avoid being accused of wanting no hope and no change. They voted for Hillary Care, repackaged as Obamacare. But nobody really voted for Obama because the man didn't have, and still doesn't have, a personality. He is a shell. He is an NPC.
Mm-hmm.
It was always going to be 8 years of a black man, and then 8 years of a white woman, and then 8 years of a whatever the fuck Kamala is, some kind of non-white, non-male
A
entity.
canned laughter machine.
This was always the idea that it doesn't matter if your president is going to do the things you want them to do. It only ever mattered what their skin color is and what their vagina is, and this was just going to be the way. They succeeded in the first 8 years in the Obama thing, and honestly, they were within a hair's breadth of getting the female president, of getting the Hillary thing. It was only some kind of miracle that allowed us to avoid the Hillary years. But Joe Biden just came in there to be to be Hillary, basically, to be a placeholder for Hillary, to do everything that Hillary was supposed to have done in her reign. And then we were supposed to get Kamala to do everything that Obama and Hillary were supposed to have done in their reign. And yeah, Biden was only there to accelerate what was supposed to have always happened, and he did. It did. The Biden cartel did. Just goes to show you, it really doesn't matter. Like they like to pretend that it matters what color the president is, and what genitals the president has, but it never did. It was only there as a proxy to introduce this globalist communism thing that's very obviously happening right now.
Yeah. What's interesting is like all of the stuff that was thrown at Trump to try to reduce the number of people who would be willing to vote for him. So I remember there was a thing that went around, oh, well, he's Jewish, with the idea that the anti-Jew conspiracy theorists are all right-wing, and therefore right-wingers wouldn't vote for him if they thought he was Jewish, but he's not. He's not. The Trump's racial background is monkey wrench. And the American people threw a monkey wrench into the mechanisms of the political establishment. And the political establishment, well, hose mad.
He appears to be Scottish.
Yeah.
Scottish / English / the same thing as the vast majority of Americans. Mm-hmm. So that's none of that counts. That's just white man, which is like orange man but worse. Yeah. Or is orange worse than white? I don't know.
Well, if he's an orange man
and
a white man, that makes him a creamsicle man, right?
Yes.
Creamsicle man bad. But in any case, the point so far is, like I said, this wasn't like it wasn't something that you could say, well, this was all an accident. This was all. They just sort of fell into corruption slowly over time. I don't believe that for a minute. The initial installation of Hunter Biden in the Navy indicates that this was a long-term plan. It wasn't that Hunter Biden was messed up and Joe was trying to save him. It was Hunter Biden was messed up because Joe was using him. So, and this bit here, this is just the proof that Twitter did lie. So, text at the bottom of this clearly stipulated the scope of the work, recover data to store server and contact customer when complete, and the consequences if Hunter didn't return to the repair shop to pick up the laptop within 90 days, which he didn't do. He never paid this, by the way. Equipment left with the Mac shop after 90 days, a notification of completed service will be treated as abandoned, and you agree to hold the Mac shop harmless For any damage or loss of property in the event of non-payment, Mac Shop reserves the right to remove any equipment or parts installed. So basically it becomes their property, and they can dispose of it as they see fit, and it's not hacked at that point. It's just theirs.
So do I have this right? If Hunter actually did turn out to have the bodies of children in his basement, like Sam Harris fantasized he would, he's not legally liable for that. He could have 100 children in his basement, dead children, and due to his father's pardon, he cannot be prosecuted for that.
According to the way the pardon is written, that's correct.
Beautiful.
As long as it was within a time period, the time frame that the pardon is for. Interestingly, that also means if they call Hunter Biden to testify against Joe Biden for actions that Joe Biden took during that 10-year period.
He can't take the fifth.
Right. He can't say, I decline to testify on the grounds that I might incriminate myself, because he can't incriminate himself, because he's a blanket pardon during that time period. There is nothing that he can confess to that would send him to jail.
Presumably he's just going to say...
prosecuted.
He's just going to say, I don't remember, Your Honor.
Yep, that's... well,
that's his version of taking the fifth.
I'm not entirely sure that I would doubt whether he, given the stuff that's come out about his drug use, I'm willing to believe that he doesn't have very much brain left. But, so that might be believable. Mocking Moniker asks, can pardon cover treason since treason is defined in the Constitution? That one I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I suppose if you pardon yourself for future crimes and then commit treason, the next government's going to come along and say, we're going to figure out a way to retroactively make that ineffective. Since you're playing with the rules, we're going to play with the rules. And it's quite possible that that's going to happen with Joe Biden's pardons. That they're going to come up, the next administration is going to come up with a way to delegitimize them. Very possible. And the other interesting thing about Hunter Biden refusing or not being able to take the fifth, by the way, if he cannot take the fifth, he can be compelled to testify and jailed if he refuses. So Biden kind of put himself in a weird situation. If he doesn't pardon himself, if he doesn't blanket pardon himself, he could be completely vulnerable now.
Unless he can plead insanity on account of not remembering anything. Like, Hunter doesn't remember anything because he's a fucking junkie, and Joe doesn't remember anything because he's a fucking mental invalid. They can both just go, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. Oh, really? Then why were you able to get away with it? I don't know. That's just the system. I'm a fucking Alzheimer's head, and my son is a fucking meth head. Mm-hmm. Sorry, it's not our fault that we laundered hundreds of billions of dollars through Ukraine. That's not even. Allegedly, none of this happened. It's fine. Nobody remembers this happening. There's a paper trail for all of it, but nobody remembers it happening. Like, Joe, how did hundreds of billions of dollars get funneled through your second born? And he's like, I don't know. And you can't judge me for it because I'm mentally incapable. Am I still the president? Yes, I'm still the president. Why am I still the president? I don't know. It doesn't even matter. It's just this thing, Shut up.
Yeah. Here's the deal. Shut up. That's pretty much what we're going to get from Joe Biden. Personally, the thing I want to see the most out of all of this is the Trump administration changing the system in a way that will prevent this from happening again. Like, I would love to see accountability for everyone that was involved. That'd make me, relieved as well. But it's a billion times more important to me to see them find a way that going forward, nobody else can do what the Biden crime family did. Mangaka92 says, here's the deal, shut up. Pray I don't alter it further. Yes, pretty much.
I have altered the deal.
Which is much different, by the way, from when you deal the alter. So this part gives a little bit about the money, some of the money, right? Devin Archer, who has since, if I understand right, it's been since, not previously, been convicted of felonies. He graduated from Yale about the same time as Leslie Wolf. Leslie's husband, Daniel Wolf, just so happens to be a professor at the same school where Joe ran the Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement, the University of Pennsylvania. Leslie's husband teaches at the medical school, university which controlled the funding and budget for the Biden Center, received more than $22 million from anonymous Chinese donors. $15 million of which came in just a 2-month span from March to May in 2018, thereby repeatedly and blatantly violating more federal law. Federal statute does not permit anonymity to foreign donations over a $250,000 threshold. So it's kind of like the Clinton Foundation. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Clinton money laundering conspiracy theory through the Clinton Foundation, with the idea that foreign leaders actually pay a lot of money into the Clinton Foundation. And it is, the theory is, and I happen to subscribe to it myself, but it's not something that I'm going to claim I have proved in looking into it. Other people have a lot of evidence that they've put forth that really has me convinced that it's just essentially payment for policy decisions, and it was, as long as Hillary had a position of influence within government, the donations that were received by the Clinton Foundation were significantly higher than after she was no longer in government. In the meantime, the Clinton Foundation has been associated with some pretty skeezy things, including the alleged kidnapping attempt of a bunch of children in Haiti that the individuals accused of kidnapping, or attempted kidnapping, claim to think were orphans, but who were not orphans. They had parents. Their parents didn't send them out to be taken to America, but that's what was about to happen. So the
Clintons are your parents now. The Democrat Party is
Yeah.
your parents now. Get used to it.
This is the same kind of scam where foreign organizations or foreign leaders pay money into a center for diplomacy and global engagement. Like, what on earth does that even do? It's not exactly like that organization operates in an official government capacity, or if it does, whose authorization put that into play? Did the American people know about it? Did the American people vote for it? Did the American people support it? So a lot of money came in there from China. like I said before, remember that long-term plan. Like, we're looking at, this is 10 years. And it's 2024 still for a few days. This is 10 years. If you go back to the actual purchase of the laptop, it's 14 years. Very long-term plan. So this is the receipt for the laptop, I think, from the FBI. They confirmed there was an investigation into the money laundering. See if we go down here. Nope, it's the next page. So, after Hunter realized that he had forgotten to pick up his laptop, because it had made the news, it's already been turned over to the FBI and everything, if I understand right, he dispatched his lawyer and fixer, George Mesiras, to call Mac Isaac and ask, very diplomatically we are sure, what in the hell was going on. Apparently, Mesiras had been contacted by the New York Post to comment on the materials that the Post would publish the next day. Hunter needed Mesiras to run interference, and quickly. Hunter evidently told Mesiras that he dropped off the laptop in 2017, which Mesiras then conveyed to Mac Isaac. In fact, Hunter had abandoned the laptop 2 years later, in 2019. Third-party sources confirmed the authenticity of the email below. In a republic with even the patina of an impartial press corps, the email below would have inspired curiosity and fresh reporting. And here's where he introduces himself as the lawyer, asks about the records. Here's the, Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to DC and giving me an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together. It's really an honor and pleasure. From Pozarski. Like, there's a bunch of interesting stuff here. Get to the next page. This picture of Joe Biden. So, aside from the fact that his face is more pinched, anybody remember the cigarette ghost from the movie Ghost? And the hairstyle? I don't know if you guys remember. Let me see if I can find it.
Jesus. Yeah, no, I don't remember the movie. Jeez.
Let's see if I can find him. I can't remember the name of the actor. You'd know it if I said it, though. He's Subway Ghost. He's referred to as Subway Ghost. Let me see if I can find an image. Oh, come on, computer. It is now being super slow, calling up images instead of all on a Google search. How bad is that? So, the actor's name is Vincent Schiavelli. And maybe you wouldn't know him if I said his name, but you'll recognize his face. And it just, for some reason, it makes me think of, this is the image right here. See if I can get it to open up. Why is this all of a sudden super slow? It's just a Google search. I mean, I know why it's slow, because I'm going through a 600 plus page PDF file. About a PDF file. About a PDF file. PDF file about a PDF file. Good grief, why won't this open? Alright, well, I'll show it in a minute. Let's see if I can... Maybe. There we go. Yeah, it's going to take a minute to come up, so I'm going back to the page. So this is basically the next part, and we're not going to get into this tonight, but I will point out. So we get this up to 2022, and it's pretty much 100% confirmed that the laptop is actually Hunter Biden's laptop. Should have been allowed to influence the election. People should have been able to guide their voting decisions based on knowing what that was and what it represented. Should have led to criminal investigations when it was exposed. And it very much should have actually led to some pretty widespread legal activity. Because, as we'll start going over next week, a lot of the discussion about this is, it makes it sound as if it was just Joe Biden and his son pulling shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
No. 4 parts of the Biden family, 4 crime families that worked together. And so we're going to look at that as well. And this is another part of it, as I've been going through the business crimes end of this. The more I read, the more I'm inclined to believe that Joe Biden had a lot more savvy than the news media and the public gave him credit for. That the stuff that's been happening in the last 4 years with him looking more and more senile, and how that's all fake. That him playing the part of just being Obama's puppet, totally fake. Right? All of that is just his way of covering his ass in a way of, feigned incompetence. Right? I'm too dumb to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's like bullshit. So the image finally came up. Let's see if I can get it to show here. Yeah. I'm going to have to move the screen so you can see. Let me see if I can make this bigger. There we go. But it just makes me think of this guy. He's just got that same kind of, although
Oh God, yeah. I forget what his Jeffrey. Why can't I think of his last name? I think it starts with a T.
You're right. Vincent. Vincent Schiavelli.
Is it Vincent? Okay. Oh, excuse me.
I was thinking the other guy too, but yeah, no. And they refer to him as a subway ghost. Yeah, seen him in a bunch of stuff, and he did a great job playing that part. But it's just that's the same. The sticking out the sides and everything, all kind of unkempt and all of that. It just makes me think of that image when I see this. Even though it's a lot shorter hair, it just made me think of that. Like, I don't know. A lot of guys, when they start having, like Biden's got a bit of a widow's peak too, but when they start having like the receding hairline and everything, a lot of guys just shave their head. So it just depends on the guy. But and that's actually a fairly young picture of Biden. That's from the year that I was born. So that picture's 50 years old. 52. Anyway, we will start here next week. An explanation of sort of the ins and outs of the Biden crime family. Like when we talk about what's Joe covering for, he's covering
the phrasing the
ins and outs. So that wasn't an accident. Come on, I gotta do something. Because, like, this was one fucked up family.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
In more ways than one.
Yeah, in more ways than one.
It's amazing that any children actually survived out of that household. And I mean, they almost didn't, right? Because the mom tried to kill them all.
I mean, Bo famously did not survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And neither did Hyde. Neither did Hunter. Arguably,
Yeah.
he's a shell of a walking shell of what was once a man, and so is
Yeah.
Biden, to some degree.
Well, the thing about addiction, like even if you let yourself go and allow yourself to become addicted for the sake of appearances, to protect against something else, you're still compromising your mind in a way that it never comes back from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when it comes to the kinds of drugs that he was using. I had family members that used multiple different types of drugs, and it's like they're not the same person anymore. It's like there was a before the addiction and after the addiction, and the person who existed before the addiction died and was replaced by a pod person that after the addiction got so bad and started having such an impact on his life that he had to go into recovery. Even when he went into recovery and he got better, it was a better version of the pod person. Right? I never got my uncle back. You just don't get him back. And so, it is fair to say Hunter Biden, the original Hunter Biden, doesn't exist anymore. Whoever this Hunter Biden is a totally different person, and he'll never be the same again. So.
And the same can be said for Joe Biden.
Yep.
Hunter Biden got addicted to crack from a very early age. There never really was a real Hunter Biden because he was always... It's a bit like Uday Hussein. Like, Uday Hussein was one of the worst people who ever lived. He would just murder people for the sake of murdering them. It wasn't even for any personal reason. He was the son of Saddam Hussein, so he could just kill whoever he wanted and get away with it.
For entertainment purposes for himself. He was entertained by it.
Yeah, and similar with Hunter Biden, he was always an addict of whatever could get him through being the son of Joe Biden, and it's difficult to even try and imagine what that was like.
Yeah.
Hunter Biden was a crack addict, and that's awful. But his father was addicted to something else. And it's difficult to even describe what it is or was or still is.
Megalomania.
That Joe Biden was addicted to. It's megalomania. Yeah, it's
money.
His
power.
drug. His drug was locking people up for being on drugs, but not his son.
Yeah.
His addiction was punishing everyone else for their addictions, and so yeah, even the worst Jordan Neely you can imagine, even the worst fentanyl head, like fucking up people's lives on a train, is at least he had to pay for it in his own head. Joe Biden was addicted to ruining other people's lives. And he never had to face the consequences of his addiction because his addiction was ruining other people's lives. Except his son's. His addiction was ruining Jordan Neely's life. And, and never giving him the respite that might have pulled him through to the other side of his fentanyl addiction. And that's incredibly sad. But Joe Biden's addiction is and always has been punishing men for the consequences of what he himself did to them.
Yep.
Joe Biden's so much worse than a crackhead. He devoted his life to ruining the lives of crackheads. That's what he's addicted to. That's what he's always been addicted to, ruining the lives of lesser people.
Yep.
To bolster his own life as a virtue signaler. Let's face it.
Yep. And
He's one of the worst people who ever lived. Fuck him. I hope he dies and goes to hell and is tortured forever by demons. At least he'll be in the misery that loves company, for he is a demon that has only ever tormented people. So yeah, I hope he dies and goes to hell forever and gets tormented by the kinds of demons that he has fomented in his lifetime. Awful person. Just nothing. There's nothing good to say. But
this is the guy that wrote the law that killed your due process rights if you're a man in this country. Right? This is the guy that invented the idea that if you just are walking down the street and a cop thinks that you look suspicious for any reason, that you should be presumed guilty of something to the degree that the cop can start interrogating you right there on the street. And if you look suspicious in your attempts to comply, or you fail to comply, you can get abused, you can get arrested, you can get investigated, you can even get prosecuted, and you should have no recourse about it. Because, after all, you looked cross-eyed at that cop once. Or maybe you had the wrong kind of shoes. And so there you go. Richard Bier asks, how do we know that it isn't Jill Biden who is the puppet master at Hannah Wallen? Well, we don't know. But everything seems to trace back to Joe Biden, Mr. Anti-Due Process himself. So...
Jill Biden is only in charge of looking after Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the real Joe Biden probably died 20 years ago or something. Like, the Joe Biden that we saw that was like 6 inches taller than the Joe Biden we knew, like the one who appeared in public like shortly after it was officially announced that Joe Biden wouldn't be running for president in 2024. Like, yeah, none of this is real. Like, Jill Biden was. I know it looks like Jill was Joe's handler, but there never was a Joe in Jill Biden's lifetime. It was just whatever body double that could be supplied by
quite possibly
by the dipsy, you know.
Quite possibly, except that we do have a whole family that financially benefited from this to read about. Coming up next week, we will dig into that a little bit. We'll at least go over the first few pages of information laying out, because we're looking at actually a lot of people involved here, as you can see. So, that's why I titled this the way I titled it. What's he covering up here? Because the question in my mind is quite relevant, considering what he pardoned. And the scope of the pardon, what that covers, that 10-year period, pretty much covers the entire time after the laptop was bought. And from the first action that can be traced back, that he was involved in his son's business. So... Any case, we will get into that next week because it is 9 o'clock. Well, it's 9:13, and that's pretty much. We've been at this for a couple of hours, and I don't want to stretch it out too much. This is going to take a while to go over. We will probably get into that next week. There are some things brewing in the news that I might have to talk about aside from that. If any information comes out, any solid information comes out about those drones, for instance, that might preempt it, just depending on what it is. I have my own theory about that one, too. Since Trump, when he talked about those, he said the government knew what they were. He knew where the government knows where they came from. The government knows where they went and everything. Mm-hmm. And then he talked about where he wasn't going to be the next week, right? That indicates that the target of any threat from these things might be him, in my opinion. It's like he would have no reason to say, I'm not going to this location or that location, unless he was trying to warn people to not be there, or he was indicating that that place wouldn't be a good target if somebody wanted to do him harm. And since he was talking about his hometown, I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
But, like I don't know. That's just a crazy conspiracy theory. Don't quote me on that.
I mean, it's only a few weeks, but it's still a long ways away to the inauguration.
Yeah.
I'm fully expecting any number of shenanigans to transpire, and
yeah,
but we're gonna be there anyway. We're gonna assemble anyway, just to see what happens.
Badgers.
Yes.
We might all get sent to prison forever, but fuck it, we'll see what happens.
We are not going to join together to create a giant mech, though. That would hurt. So, but with that, actually, that'd be pretty cool if we could do that. I wouldn't mind being able to do that, even if I had to be like the left leg or something. Like,
I want to be the white badger, white power.
With that, everybody, thanks for going over this material with me. Again, like, I know it seems like it's really dry material, but the little bits and pieces that are coming out in this are definitely indicating that this was a much more serious issue than anybody has really put together besides the Marco Polo organization that did this report. And just from looking at this, when you compare that back to what's been going on in politics with the United States and Ukraine, and what that indicates for the common man here in the United States, especially the common man who is of military age, it's just infuriating to realize that for that long we've had a crime family engaging in vast money laundering operations in multiple nations with impunity within our government, affecting the leadership of other countries, and creating this war between Ukraine and Russia that might end up, that you could get dragged into as a participant. Like that's pretty much dystopian fiction, in my opinion. Right? It's like something out of the Hunger Games or some shit like that. So I hope everybody's been paying attention to even as dry as this shit is. You couldn't write fiction that's more convoluted than this.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to my two co-hosts for going through this with me. Thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. We will see you next Thursday. It'll be the day after Christmas, I believe. And good night, all.
Men's rights activists are machines. dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.